Hello friends, and thank you for joining us here at Non-Toxic Home. I'm glad you're here, and Dave is glad you're here too, and he'll be here in just a second. Now, one of the reasons why we started doing these videos together is because I come at things from a very academic, fact-based background. I am a very deep researcher. I don't blindly believe whatever I'm told about anything these days, and I question everything because, quite frankly, most everything is a lie, I've found. And he comes at things from a very, very, very non-academic approach. And he is very real world based and very, average Joe sort of guy. And he doesn't read peer-reviewed articles. Well, not that I read them anymore either, because over 90% are easily dismissed as junk science in 5 minutes. But that's the sort of backgrounds and approaches that we come at life from. Now, what's interesting is that we generally come to the same conclusions just via completely different methods. And he uses more logic to come to that method, and I generally, or to that conclusion, and I generally come to that conclusion based on research or facts, that sort of thing. So that's why we did that. That's why we started to do this. The topic, obviously, of this video is in regards to fear. And if you look at the Bible, it said that it is commanded to us not to fear, 365 times? I don't know. I haven't counted. I know it's in there a lot. Because it's in there so much, we're not sharing verses because there's just so many verses that tell us not to fear. As far as my background goes, my major in college was psychology. And so one of the first things that I learned in Psych 120, Introduction to Psychology, was basically social engineering and how the masses, to put it bluntly, are controlled by those who decide what is best for the masses. And these terms, of course, and these phrases were not used in my psychology courses by my professors, but that's what they were telling me. And I knew this, but it didn't really sink in until many years later. I should have been thinking more, right? That should have been something that just smacked me upside the head, but it didn't. Of course, that was 2001, so it was many years ago. But fear is a tool, and fear is used not just by the mainstream media, but by the alternative media as well. If you watch or look at the CNN, NBC, CBS, any of these mainstream outlets, they're all telling you fear, 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 fear. And sure, there may be some happy news in there, or maybe Kanye West did something entertaining, but for the most part, it's fear. And when you are experiencing fear, it is literally impossible for you to exercise critical thought. This has been studied and studied and studied and studied. This is not even a theory. This is a fact because it's so clear. So if you are watching the mainstream media, I highly recommend you reconsider doing so because of this. Fear is used to control you. It is used to guide your actions. If you are experiencing that emotion, you can't question the action. It's literally impossible for you to question it. So you just obey what you're told to do so that you can hopefully escape that fear. The alternative news media does the same thing. They also tell you fear, 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 fear. And while their reasons for the fear may have more fact behind them, that doesn't change the reality that the alternative media also is trying to make you fearful. And they're using fear against you as well. So what do? Well, if it's alternative media, there are still a lot of times when, if you look to the original source material, whether it's a law, a court document, a study, it says the opposite of whatever outlet says it does. So a lot of times you can't trust the alternative news media either. They don't want you to think either. I refer to all of this as fear porn, because fear is addictive. When you experience fear, and this may not make sense, but this is just how it is. When you experience fear, you have an endorphin rush, and basically in your brain gets addicted to it, and you want more and more and more. Even though your body may be physiologically telling you, fight or flight, run or fight, usually you'll feel angry and drop comments about things. You may go to YouTube and look for people who are saying the opposite and then drop angry comments with no fact whatsoever. And the reason that you can't drop any fact behind it is because there is none, because it's all an emotion. So we are being programmed, and we have been conditioned to go from emotion to emotion to emotion to emotion, rather than critical thought, research. And because of that is how so many people are in that cycle. And hardly anyone even realizes that they're in that cycle. And that's the genius of it, quite frankly. That's my perspective on fear and the status today of it. Dave has a bit of a different perspective on it.
Yeah, I don't, like she said, I'm not a researcher. I come at it from, I care about my family. And the things that are going on in today's world, obviously, she said, we wanted to make sure we talked to you about fear. And what I want to talk to you about is not just necessarily fear, but how to, in the world, because she hasn't been in the physical world for a very long time, but how do you deal with what's out there in the physical world and still maintain things in your brain? Let's see, this is 2021.
Yeah.
It's amazing how time can get away from you.
Mm-hmm.
But this is 2021, and we're in March of 2021. And a year ago, I worked as a manager at a landscaping company in Indy. And this was about the time when things were starting to just get crazy. And as a manager, I had to have an opinion about what was going on and where the company should go with it and how we should react to it and all these things. She mentioned that she's a researcher, and I come at it from more of a logical standpoint, kind of a regular Joe kind of thing, just a little bit smarter than the average Joe maybe. I looked at, to overcome any kind of fear that's out in the world, I looked at what the world was showing me in numbers and definitions, and came to my conclusions from that. I didn't look at anything, no documents that were on any popular news websites, that kind of thing. I didn't pay attention to that. She taught me that. She teaches me a lot of things, but I had to it took about a half an hour, and I had to form my own opinion about what was going on. And once that opinion was formed, I came to her to tell her. And as she mentioned, lo and behold, we came to the exact same conclusions about things, and we started talking about it a whole lot. But once I have an opinion about something, it all comes back to I care about my family. We have been through the ringer. All I've ever cared about was making sure that my family was safe, because my family did that for me. So the other aspect of it is maintaining a sound mind through it all. you come to an opinion. We both came to the same opinion. And at that point, you decide that there's nothing to be afraid of at all. So it's quite frankly relatively easy when you go out into the world, when you have come to your own conclusions, because you've had critical thought and you've dealt with it with a sound mind, to not be afraid of what's out there once you know that there's nothing to be afraid of. That is, but as she mentioned, you cannot, when you're afraid of things, you don't think clearly. That's why most people, when something catastrophic happens, they don't know what to do. Because I compartmentalize things. So I came to the conclusion that there's nothing to be afraid of. And that is what you have to do in today's world when you apply fear not. That's in the Bible. When you apply that to the world. And you just, critical thought, you think about it, you do some math, look at a definition or two, understand that there's not really anything to be afraid of. I took that to my job, and honestly, I wasn't there that much longer. To maintain it, part of doing what we do for a living, part of it is kind of having to sort of know what's going on with the weather. They're not really that good at.
I don't know.
It used to be better, but it's really hard. But we still have to kind of look at that. And I made a choice, a bad one initially. I would go to mainstream media website, already with the sound mind of knowing that all the fear porn that's on there wasn't anything to worry about, but still looking at it. Because you got to look at it to get to the weather report, which is what I was looking at. And she got on me for that.
Mm-hmm.
Many times.
Yep.
I want to say probably more than a dozen.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I got on him was because he was different. He was a different person after he was on the mainstream news. His brain was like, his emotions were more volatile. It was different. It was not of God. It was so clear to me. That was why. So,
when I tell you on these videos that you have to make a choice, I'm not kidding. I do too. We all have to make choices from time to time, and hopefully you have a spouse you can talk to, a friend, whatever. But a simple thing like checking the weather to keep we're doing a project for a lady, and it's a big project, and it's a life-changing project for everyone, really. A simple thing of checking the weather so that we would know sort of
maybe
what was going on, whether it was going to get 3 inches of rain or be sunny. That was affecting me. Mm-hmm. And so we found another source that we could keep an eye on. She would show me where she goes to check things. But real world experience tells me that you're going to experience fear if you don't think for yourself. Mm-hmm. That is the bombshell statement that I'm gonna make. If you don't think for yourself and come to your own conclusions about things, you're gonna be afraid. Mm-hmm. That's just what the world wants you to do. They want you to fall in line with and be these little minions that are just running around. Now, when I go out, I am a bit concerned that I might lose go into a favorite business because they've decided to change the ways they do things. But there are other businesses. And it is what it is. We don't, if a business doesn't give us a choice, they don't get our business. It's that kind of thing. But,
and no one has the right to make your medical decisions for you.
yeah.
Plain and simple.
So,
Whether, even if you aren't of our faith, plain and simple. Medical interventions are not one size fits all, and they never have been, and they never will be, even though, we'll be told that they are one size fits all. We already have been.
So the crazy thing is a year ago, we both came to the same conclusion about what's going on in the world and whether we needed to be afraid of it or not, whether we needed to take action or not. And we both did it completely different. I did math and I looked up definitions. She did research.
Yeah.
And it all, I guess we were part of, we live in a woods and we have fresh air. And we managed to come to these conclusions when life was still really crazy and we were out in the world. Because I was working as a manager. I was being paid to do things in Indy. I'll say Indy because it's fine. But I still had a sound mind enough. And I still cared about my family enough to know that I needed to have opinions at that time. And those are the two different perspectives that we come at. I will say one other thing about this, and I say it in every book, but there are a lot of documentaries on Amazon. I think might be some on Netflix. I'm not sure. We don't have Netflix at the moment. But there's some good stuff on those about people who have gone out to investigate different things. And when we were first starting and learning about the Bible, there was an expedition that checked out the Grand Canyon, and that changed everything about what's in the Bible for me. To know that there's actual proof that stuff in there is for real. So,
and I knew that in 2000. So that's just how far away we are. I used to be very deep into apologetics, and I can't believe that he didn't realize that there was proof of the global flood before. But that's neither here nor there. This video is, obviously about fear. But how do you get out of the cycle? If you are in the cycle of fear, what do? It's a choice. Mm-hmm. It is a choice, plain and simple. If you are watching the mainstream news and you're stuck in that, if you are stuck in watching YouTube videos that cause you to experience fear, if you're watching a video and it makes you feel fearful, then you need to shut it off, because that is not of God. Fear is not of God, period. And I was in that cycle at one point as well, where he came in and he said, "Honey, what are you listening to?" And or it was just, they were YouTube videos about just, I don't know, some kind of theory, whatever was going on in the world. But they were encouraging fear.
Oh.
And they were fear mongering. And you came in and you were like, "Honey, I don't think that's good for you." And I went, "Oh, yeah, you're right." And then I stopped. And so now when I watch YouTube videos, they're focused on bushcraft and gardening and things like that, rather than whatever's going on in the world. Now, hold on, I'm not done yet. Now, with the alternative media, I used to subscribe to many, many, many newsletters as far as the alternative media goes, and they have become more and more geared towards fear-mongering as well, so I unsubscribed. Because of that, I don't want to experience fear. I don't need to, and I know that it's not of God, so I choose not to. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. I unsubscribed from a slew of them, and so there are a lot of things that are going on in the world that I don't know about now, but you know what? Here is where you're just going to love this. Holy Spirit convicted me that that's what I needed to do. last year. So I unsubscribed from just a ton of newsletters. And obviously, we don't watch the news, we don't pay attention to that sort of thing anymore. But here recently, there was in the United Kingdom an attack on chickens, and I don't know if it actually happened or if it was just proposed or whatever, that a lot of chickens would be killed. And I'm not researching things like this. I'm not keeping an eye on what's going on in the world. I know that this thing is a huge deal, and socialism and technocracy and all of those things. Okay, I know that. I know, I've researched it, all that stuff. I know what I need to know. The Bible tells me what I need to do. And so I'm not looking for those things. I was actually looking for information about rabbits online. And I clicked one link and I ended up somewhere where it was talking about this thing with the chickens in the United Kingdom. No, wait. I wasn't looking for rabbits. I was looking for gardening stuff. And I came up with this thing about chickens and what was happening in the United Kingdom about chickens. And so as a result, we're talking about rabbits now, because chickens are loud. You can't hide chickens. And especially roosters, but let's be honest here, the hens can be really loud too. I don't know if you've heard them in some of our videos, but they can be very obnoxious. They're very rude.
They just let us sleep.
The hens let us sleep. So this information was not information that I was looking for, but Holy Spirit brought it to me. If you just trust God above men, the information that you need to know will be brought to you when it needs to be brought to you. You just have to trust.
Okay. So as far as, I've just got a challenge for you guys. Just a challenge for anyone who logs on here who isn't part of the community and all those things. We learned, and I think it's called shadowing. Is a really, I was trying to remember when I was writing my notes, but we learned last night, and I already sort of knew this, but there were 150 million votes for president this year, and that was called a record. There are over 300 million people in the U.S. and there's the U.S. and then I think there's
territories.
Thank you. Couldn't think of the word. So far less than half of the U.S. voted for the person that is in charge.
For anyone.
For anyone really. So you're trusting someone who's put into power by less than half of the people that they're put into power to rule. Why does that make sense? If you're believing what the world is telling you, then you're trusting that person and the people that work for them. You're trusting what they are telling you, and they were put into power by less than half of the people that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. I just challenge you, whether that makes sense or not. It doesn't to me, but that's just, to me, if any club that I've ever been a part of, the leader of that club was chosen by the majority of that club, not half of them.
It's true.
So I just want to challenge you. Does that make sense to you that if you're not listening to your sound mind and the Bible and you're choosing to listen to the world? Why? You're being told what to believe by people that were voted less than half.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Why does that why is that the intelligent thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
If you That's just a challenge because I rack my brain about that sometimes, and it just doesn't make sense to me.
From the research perspective on what he just spoke about, the NDAA here in the United States doesn't just make propaganda legal to be disseminated by the mainstream media and the government, it also funds it. So we as taxpayers are funding the politicians to lie to us. Now, there is going to be more of an attack on politicians as time marches on because technocracy does away with politicians. So it will be interesting to see what happens as far as politicians go over the coming years, because you can't have politicians and have technocracy complete. Obviously, we're already partially in a technocracy, but I think that'll be interesting to see as far as, you know, are politicians at some point going to be demonized? How are they going to make that happen? How are they going to make us demand that?
But if you are in a situation, if you're in a situation where you are, we have each other, and hopefully you have a significant other, but if you're trying to break that cycle and you don't know how, it can be tough. I was in that cycle for probably 3 or 4 years. I want to say I knew I was good at what I'm good at, and I was just beating down the same door over and over and over again. One year I had 20 jobs, and if you're keeping count, that's more than one a month. And it wasn't until about a year ago, like I said, that just stuff came crashing down, and I was...
You finally woke up to it, finally. And honestly, what took you being able to wake up to it was the zombie apocalypse virus of 2020. That was part of it.
Yeah.
You know, because there were things that you were supposed to do that weren't toxic. So...
Yeah, so if you're in a situation that you feel like maybe you're listening to this and you want to break your cycle, put it in the comments. We do. I'm fairly new to YouTube comments and the way people talk on there. She's laughing.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I pay attention to the adult comments. I don't the other ones.
You don't need to say that in every video, my honey. I love you very much. He is still shell-shocked by the way people act on social media. And how most people just say, no, you're wrong, and then leave it at that and don't have any critical thought or any evidence behind it whatsoever. Just, no, you're wrong. The end. Because that is what we've been programmed to do. They're good little robots. Yeah, well, but you're not a robot because you're still here. So we applaud that.
We keep an eye on the comments, and the sound mind stuff is absolutely welcome here. If you're questioning a verse or just want to know more about our experience, we'll be happy to tell you.
Yep. Thanks so much for being here, friends. Stay out of the fear. You can break free of that cycle. You just got to choose to do it. Have a most beautiful and blessed day.